There's a quote that we use all the time where it says, the opposite of depression isn't happiness, it's expression.
You're listening to Creative Rebels, the podcast for creatives. Welcome back, Rebels. David Speed here. Hope you are having a good week. Thanks to everyone who got in touch about last week's episode. Glad that so many of you enjoyed that. So if you've not yet checked out last week's episode with the tattooist Rosie Rackham, then go and give it a listen. You will enjoy it, or your money back. That's my promise. And next week, we have a really interesting guest, Zoe Allen, coming on the show, speaking about, especially if you're a visual artist, I think you'll find it very illuminating and useful, and it might throw up some stuff that you've never considered before. I definitely found it useful personally for me, so hoping that will translate out to you guys as well. This week, we are joined by Zack Evans, who is the co-founder of Create Repeat, and I know that there's a lot of you that listen to Creative Rebels and not much else because you can't find much else that works for you. I think you might enjoy Create Repeat. There's another YouTube series as well called Creative Minds, guy called Will, who is very excellent. I think I'm gradually starting to find different bits of content that do fit in the same mold as Creative Rebels and don't necessarily have annoying, shouty people presenting them. So that is always a positive. This was a really beautiful chat with Zack. I think, as you'll be able to tell, he and I are aligned on many things. And I think his journey is so interesting in terms of, last week with Rosie, we spoke about sort of finding your purpose. And I think we speak about it here in a different way. I was never lower in my life than when I felt like I didn't have a purpose, and never higher when I realized what my purpose was. And I think so often we can get locked into, and it normally comes down to money. We can get locked into doing things that we don't actually want to be doing. For example, I cannot tell you the amount of illustrators that I've met who've got into illustrating for the love of design and bold colours and funky aesthetic, who are now trapped in making work for corporate clients that they absolutely can't stand, and the paycheck is addictive, so they just keep coming back to doing the same stuff. They're stuck in a rut, they're doing the same thing. Really interesting to talk to Zack, who has been to the highest highs. I mean, he's starred in mainstream TV shows that many of us love. He was a very popular comedian, had huge, making comedy content on social media with a huge account, and something didn't feel right. And I have so much respect for him for seeing that, for feeling in his bones that it wasn't the right thing to do and needing to make a change. And the work that he's making now with Create Repeat inspires me, and I think it will inspire you. So without a second's hesitation, let's get into this week's episode with Zack Evans. Hello, Zack. Welcome to Creative Rebels.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you, dude. So we were talking off mic before we started the show about my sort of journey into creativity. And for you, has it always been something creative that you wanted to do? Have you ever been like pushed into other avenues, or has it always been at the core, like, I'm going to do something creative with my life?
I've always been a creative person. I was a creative kid. My family likes to joke that anytime we went to the movie theaters and saw a film, I was itching to get home to pretend I was that character. So I'd go see Tarzan and I'd be back home in my underpants wrestling stuffed animals, pretending that I was Tarzan. And I've always been that way. I really like sports as well. And so throughout my life, it was a juggle of, do I want to pursue basketball, or do I want to pursue, theater or any kind of creative outlet? And I think around middle school, for me, that's right when YouTube launched, and it was like YouTube and MySpace. And I like to joke that I was part of the guinea pig generation of, going through the middle school and high school years with the internet, with social media, with being able to post anything and sort of grow a following. And my dad gave me his old video camcorder, and I started making sketches with friends and any neighbor kid that I could throw into a video. And the rest is history. I went from there. I went to film school, and then I started making internet viral videos outside, like after film school at BuzzFeed. And so I've always been in the mix with creativity, but also my interests have jumped all over the place. I wanted to be a musician for a while. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian for a while. I wanted to be a film director. I wanted to be a graphic designer and a creative director. And so I tend to do everything. I don't know that's always the best advice, to be the jack of all trades, but I do think I am one of those people.
Do you have a favorite thing that you do? Like, what's the thing that brings you the most joy?
Currently, it's writing. I've been really enjoying Substack. I've been enjoying writing newsletters, and my wife and I actually have a book coming out in November that is sort of like a 365 days of creative practice type book. And that's something, to be honest, I didn't see coming. I was a comedy writer for a long time. I was trying to sell a television show and got real close with a few networks, and then the pandemic happened and everything shut down, and my life just got flipped upside down, and I had to figure out a new path. And I went this route of being a corporate creative director, and I learned so much in that. I learned about brand. I learned about, just working with non-creatives, I guess, and learning how to communicate your vision. Those were the things that I was really, learning by doing in the process. But I went on a 3-year creative sabbatical during that time where I wasn't creating anything for myself. And so my writing, all of my television and screenplays, I just sort of pushed aside. And by developing Create Repeat, we've gone into writing more long form. And I've found right now that is just I'm finding so much peace in doing it. And I think I'm being the most honest I've ever been. I think like in comedy, you're not always honest. You're kind of, at least for me, I was hiding behind it. And so I'm loving writing, but I design, I edit videos, I do all of it. And so tomorrow you could ask me, I might have a completely different answer, but right now it's writing.
I actually love that. Yeah, because you started that question off with currently is writing, and sort of being open to currently it's writing, but that might change, and I'm okay with that, because I think a lot of us are very like married to what we make and what we do, and it's nice to talk to someone who's like, yeah, this for now, and then we'll see where it goes. Because I don't think I'm like that. I think I'm very married. Like if I was asked that question, it would be, it's this, and it's been this for like a long time. So yeah, it's interesting.
I'm just trying to practice getting rid of labels for myself. I was so tied to, I think, the comedy angle that I was going. I spent probably 8 years really pursuing comedy, and I kind of lost myself while doing that. And I really liked taking a step back, and I guess that's why I'm so attracted to the word like creative. I'm just a creative, because I do try to go by my gut. I do have my crafts and my trades and the ways I make money, and my skills that I've developed, but I want to allow myself to express in whatever way that I'm feeling. That's the current state. And I used to be so rigid about, this is what I am, this is what I'm not. And I think that really put myself into a box. And so this is sort of recent, I guess. Probably in the last year, I've been as this open about what I do and what I want to do moving forward. But it's not easy, I'll tell you that.
That's true. I like that. The term creative gives us more freedom to sort of like to dip into so many things, because none of us really do one thing anymore. We're all multi-hyphenate. There's many strings to, like, everyone listening to this has got different things that they're good at, different things that they do, and especially I guess the way that the job market is going, like the days of just having one gig are sort of are really limited, I think. You mentioned about Create Repeat, which is how I discovered you. Could you give us a little rundown of what is Create Repeat?
Yeah, Create Repeat is, we call it, it's a community for creatives, but essentially it is a Instagram and a Substack and a podcast where, similar to this, where our goal is just to inspire and motivate the next generation of creators and artists out there. When I started this, I have a few partners that I work with, and I was just coming off of being laid off 3 times in 2 years. And like you're saying, the job market, it was crazy, and I was feeling so undervalued. I was really pessimistic. I was in a deep hole of depression. And before these jobs, before the pandemic, when I was at BuzzFeed, I was sort of an internet personality. I had like 200,000 followers. I was really having brand deals. I was doing the whole YouTuber thing. And I was also really unhappy doing that because I didn't feel like I was expressing myself. There's a quote that we use all the time where it says, "The opposite of depression isn't happiness, it's expression." And I felt like when I was chasing the creator lifestyle, not the creative lifestyle, I was pandering. I was looking for an audience. I was searching for validation from an audience. And so Create Repeat really came from me being sick and tired of chasing that and just wanting to have some optimism out there. There was so much pessimism at the time. This was like, 2022, we're coming out of the pandemic. It's rough times for everybody. And especially in the comedy world, it's so easy to be cynical and make fun of things. And I just got tired of it. And I wanted to make something that was inspirational and motivational for myself that wasn't cheesy. And that's kind of a hard line to walk sometimes, of trying to be motivational without being too cliche or being a cornball. But that's what I started doing. And so I started this account, Create Repeat. That was a faceless account. I didn't want to be front and center of it. I just wanted to make graphics that had an inspirational message for people to see, to be inspired. And so we did that. And, we've grown. We're at close to 170,000 followers on Instagram now. And we've got the Substack that people are really enjoying. We do that twice a week. We have one for our paid subscribers, which is a sort of a creative advice column, even though I'm a little against giving advice as a creative. So it's an oxymoron, but we have that. And then we do an essay every week to just inspire whatever we're going through. And I think what's helped Create Repeat is just knowing that I'm not like a Rick Rubin creative guru type. I'm a person who's right in the trenches dealing with all of this stuff. And my process has been examining what I'm currently going through and just expressing that and writing a message. So anytime you see, whatever graphic that you saw that encouraged you to reach out, that was just something I was currently going through at the time. And I think as we've been making more and more content, we're finding how universal it is and how creatives need a community. Creatives need each other, because I know for so much of my life, I felt like an outcast, even when I had a lot of friends, even when I was, I was popular in high school. I'm not going to lie. I was popular in high school and having that, but I didn't feel like I was myself fully, because I was hiding this artistic side of me, I guess. I don't want to come off too pretentious here, but knowing that there's so many people out there, and the great thing about the internet, there's a lot of downside to the internet, but the great thing is that you're able to find a community of people who are like-minded and going through what you're going through. And so that's just what Create Repeat is. We're just trying to put out the good word and help inspire people to just keep going. And I know that's very similar to your mission. And so I'm so happy to be on this podcast with you, because we're aligned.
We are aligned. When I first sort of found your stuff, I was like, this is the US version of me.
Yeah, let's make it global. Let's partner up.
You know how there's like twin towns of like, this is the UK version, this is the I feel like with that. And I really wanted to get you on because I know listeners to this show are often saying like what else is out there. And I did a poll before relaunching the show, saying like, what are you guys listening to at the moment? Because I thought there's going to be, in this feedback, there's going to be clear, there's going to be clear winners. There's going to be like 10 people vote for this one or 50 people vote for this one. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of, and there was I got so many messages saying, I just listened to old Creative Rebels reruns. There's really nothing like this out there. So I want to, I like, there is stuff like this out there, but it's like quite hard to find because you mentioned Rick Rubin, and it's, I've sort of discussed with people about Rick Rubin before. It's love Rick Rubin,
Hmm.
enjoyed his book to a certain degree. However, there's people who are building right now who've been building recently, and then there's people who built a long time ago. And do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we are in the trenches. We are doing it. This very like for you, very very currently. This is, and I think that's important. I think it's more relatable. I think it throws up like, well, we're dealing with like content creation and algorithms. Like a lot of the creative gurus in that space who built these things decades ago, and the world is very different, you know. So we need more create repeats, creative rebels. There's another one, creative minds. We all have creative at the beginning, but there's a
Yeah.
YouTube channel, a guy called Will who does a series called Creative Minds, and that's awesome as well. So I think in the spirit of collaboration, and at the end of the day our core values and principles are to fucking help people like live a creative life, because we've seen how beautiful it is and we're doing it ourselves, and that's our message we want to get out there. So I'm not in competition with you. I like Joey Bean. It's like we need to
Yeah.
come together and help these people.
100% agree. I mean, I just want a better world, and I just want people that, I think you said it perfectly. We're in this world of algorithms, the internet, and it's a completely different time from the old guard. And I think, I really like to say that there is a difference between being a creator and a creative, because I do think the creator is more of a performance, and it's more, it's a mixture of creativity plus strategy plus performance. That's what being a creator is, and that's a job title, where I think being a creative is something in your soul. It's something that you have. It's how you express. It's your unique ability. And I think if we can just empower more people to tap into that, I think my hope is that the world can be a better place. I don't know if that's fully true, but that's what I just hope. And I know that for me, once I've started to really lean into the creativity side of me, my life has gotten so much better, and I feel so much more free and open to discuss these sort of topics.
Yeah, I don't think that's dramatic at all. I think it's absolutely true, and I think we need to say it more. We need to say it louder, because I'm only just realizing, and Amy McNee helped me a lot with this. I don't know if you're aware of her work, but she's so incredible, and the idea of creation as rebellion,
Mm,
and I really I've been thinking a lot recently about this idea of stealing back our time, because everyone, like every billionaire corporation is in competition for our attention. We're kept scrolling, like on Netflix, where you've got like 3 seconds to switch off of a program before the next one rolls in.
yep.
It's like we want you here, we need you here, we need you here, we need your eyeballs, because that's what brings us revenue. And you being creative, unless you're creating us content, and now we've got AI to do that, so we're not really going to need you much longer. Give us all of your art, and we'll just put it into these machines and churn it out. The actual art of making something real and connecting people with people, using the internet as a tool to connect with people and connecting people in real life is more important than ever. So I don't think it's dramatic to say that. I think it's needed. I think we need to talk about it more. I think it's our human right to do this.
Couldn't agree anymore. Spot on.
So you mentioned having your obviously you've got a large following now, but how was it stepping away from when you've got an Instagram account that's got 200,000 followers? Did you try and like say to those, like, if any of you guys who are fans of me, you can come over here. I'm doing something very different, but you can come over with me, or did you just like walk away? What was the situation?
I didn't want anyone to know that I was create repeat, so I didn't post on my own personal accounts for the first year and a half. I wanted it to sort of be a project versus me blowing it up into some kind of large thing and declaring, this is what I do now. This is me, create repeat. That was a conscious decision that I made. And, during that creative sabbatical time that I talked about earlier, I lost 100,000 followers during that time. And I think what I learned there is, in my early 20s, I would say my self-worth and validation was tied up in those followers. I had a blue check mark on the pre-Elon Twitter. I had, I don't know. It was just, I was kind of living that like micro niche celebrity internet person life. And, I loved it because I had everybody, I had old school bullies reach out. I had every ex-girlfriend reach out to me. I had old employers reaching out to me. I had, my favorite sports team was offering me courtside tickets to games because I was repping their stuff on these videos. And it was a really cool lifestyle that I was living, but it wasn't, it wasn't fully who I was. And so I wanted Create Repeat to be something completely different. And so I think even sometimes when I post about it, people are confused about like, wait, what is this? What's he doing now? Is this completely out of left field? Because I was a clown. I was a jokester. And I still love comedy. I still love doing that, but I wanted to just broaden my horizon a bit instead of just being stuck in the one niche. But no, and also, I mentioned that I worked at BuzzFeed for 4.5 years, and I was there at the height of when it was at the center of the internet. And I think I learned a lot of things there of how to grow an audience that I can't fully wipe from my brain. Sometimes I wish I could just have the Men in Black, clicker and wipe my brain from the tools that I learned. But I decided to take those evil skills that I learned and try to use it for good and build, create, repeat. So that's how I essentially was doing it. And I know that, the internet is built on shareability. And so that was part of the design where it's like, okay, if I want more people to see this, the posts that we make need to be shareable. It needs to be a statement that people want to put on their story or send to their friends as a way of communicating, this is me as well. This is who I am. And so that was sort of the thought process in the creation. I guess it wasn't like I didn't sit there and like map it all out. Like, this is how I'll grow a following. It was just sort of natural to me. But yeah, and as we did that, and we would cut videos and just post inspirational clips. And, I think there's been a lot of these accounts that I've seen pop up. There's a whole business of people trying to sell courses on how to grow accounts like this. And so much of it is soulless. And, more power to the people that are having a side hustle by by making these Instagram accounts. I think that's really cool. But when I first started it, it really was just a way of expressing through my craft. And if part of my craft was virality, if that's for some reason my path that I went, I infused that into the Create Repeat way. So yeah, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could grow something just from my ideas versus me as a personality, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want to be front and center, and because I've been front and center and I don't think I handled it well, to be honest. I think I got a big head, and I don't know. I didn't love the version of myself that was the front man. And, I feel like I've always had the heart of a drummer in a band. And so I was like, okay, maybe I could just be the beat here and let the work actually speak for itself rather than me, demanding attention from everybody.
Yeah. I mean, from everything you've said so far, it sounds like this now is a much truer version of yourself. And I mean, we spoke to Justin Schumann on the show, whose whole thing is about that, is about like the choosing, because there's parts of you that aren't for the internet, and that's absolutely fine. And I have my parts that will never go online. And but I think it's really interesting, and I really appreciate your honesty of having big success with something, but something that didn't feel authentically you, not 100%. And I know how addictive a paycheck is, and I know how and obviously the status is really lovely, and the idea of bullies reaching out and stuff, and that's something that's happened to me as well. To then walk away from that is really brave, and it shows a lot of self-awareness from you, and it shows that you were, I guess it was the straw that broke the camel's back at some point, like that, like you were just like, this isn't serving me anymore, so I've got to get away from it. And I think that's so brave, especially when it is something that's working. So yeah, good for you.
Appreciate that. It was tough. I mean, the back was broken. I'll tell you that. It was and it took a lot of years and therapy and everything to kind of find that, because I think, what's so difficult about the internet is you have to be willing to, you can have success in public, but you have to be willing to fail in public. And I think that was really tough with me. I just had a few big time public failures, and I just wanted to hide and not show my face. And so me coming back through Create Repeat, I don't want it to feel like this is, some like massive rebrand of myself, but I just want to, anyone who knows me knows that, like, okay, yeah, Create Repeat is Zack. It's just this other side that the internet hasn't seen of him yet. And so my hopes is, I'm able to have this full circle of this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and this is what I want others to, kind of get behind. And hopefully it's a universal truth that people can attach to. So yeah, but it's hard. It's really hard. I still battle it daily, probably, of, that self-doubt. Even like going on this podcast, it's like, why should I talk? Why should I have a platform to discuss these things? I'm just a guy. And I think, I'm trying to find that balance of, it's okay to just be a guy, but it's also all right to take up a little space. And I think that's what I'm kind of getting back to, is being okay with spreading out a little bit and taking up the space.
So when you mentioned earlier the things that you learned at BuzzFeed and in your previous career, my ears pricked up. So let's talk about the dark arts of the internet and how we can harness that for good.
Yeah.
And so yeah, talk a little bit about what you learned over that.
BuzzFeed, it was the first job I had coming out of college. I started there as an intern, and then I went through a fellowship where it was essentially like a 3-month crash course of a class of 10 video producers, and you're all competing against each other. And BuzzFeed had this idea that, they could train anyone how to make something viral, but they couldn't teach perspective. So they were looking for unique voices and different backgrounds from all different types of people, and knowing like, hey, if you have your own point of view, we can teach you how to use that to make viral content, because their goal was to, conquer the internet, have as many identities represented as possible. And so, I guess I was the straight white guy identity, which I'm sure they needed more of. No, but after after going through the fellowship, I think only 3 of us got a full-time job, 3 or 4 of us got a full-time job. And it was a real cutthroat thing where every week we were dissecting videos, our own videos, as well as videos on the internet, and seeing why did they go viral. And so, we would look at the first 3 seconds, we would look at the first minute, we would look at the retention rate. And I feel like this was all before these sort of YouTube gurus are out who, they're selling you a course on how to, make something go viral. This was really like a lab. And I think that's what people don't realize. They think BuzzFeed, they think of like the dumb lists of cats or, some kind of stupid clickbait article, but it was a science. It was creativity plus science. And so, there the biggest lesson I learned there was just shareability, of knowing like the way virality works is people sharing things with each other. And so we did a lot of different tests there of tapping into the idea that they had was identity plus emotion equals virality. And so if you can find an identity that it has a built-in share into it, meaning say you would make a video, we did a lot of things around siblings, because if you do something to say siblings, there's a built-in share there where a brother is going to send it to his sister. So you're going to duplicate the view there. And chances are they probably have more than one sibling. And so you're going to get off of one video, one person seeing it. If they send it to their 3 other people, now you have 4 views, and it's just going to compound in views. So you'd have an identity like that. And then the emotion would be something like, things siblings do to annoy each other, or things siblings do to say they're sorry, or things siblings do when they argue, or, we would just find that, and we would make so many iterations of these videos and study how they would perform. And I think one of the biggest things that we learned there was the idea of the hate share or the negative share, and seeing that, something was like probably, I would say, I'm guessing here on the number, but it was about 4 times more likely to go viral if it was a negative connotation on the video or on the list, because people are more likely to engage with something when they're mad versus when they like something. You know, you think about if you go to a restaurant and you write a Yelp review, most of the time it's because you didn't enjoy the service or the food wasn't bad. It's rare that the food was amazing and you pull out your phone and you write a positive review. It's just the nature of humans. And so we would tap into that. And, you know, we had a lot of different tricks that we would learn. Stuff like, you know, I'm from Sacramento, California, which is the capital of California. And say I was making a video about, you know, the top 10 things about Sacramento, California, I would purposely leave out that it's the capital of California. Even though that's the thing that it's the most known for, you would purposely do that in hopes that people would be commenting, I can't believe they forgot that it's the capital. How did they not mention it's the capital? And that would build engagement. And so those were little things that we were experimenting with and learning. And it's really interesting to me when I see, you know, 10 years later, the same kind of strategies that are used in political campaigns and they're used in marketing and brand. And I think, you know, I sometimes wrestle with, was this the start of something terrible that we were doing? And, you know, or maybe it was just inevitable because the way humans are designed. But that was something that was just a really interesting, weird time to be in. And it was so experimental and it felt a little bit like Severance, you know, the show on Apple TV Plus. It was a little bit of like that clock in, clock out, make your stuff. I was responsible for making 6 videos a month. And this was older YouTube. So the videos were about 5 to 6 minutes long. And then I had a comedy partner where I had to be in his videos as well and help out on his scripts. And so we were just churning out, you know, sometimes like 30 videos a month. It felt like it was just always posting and making stuff. And we were responsible for everything. So it was writing, directing, editing, producing, shooting, coloring, uploading it to BuzzFeed, uploading it to YouTube. Like we were doing the whole thing. And so their model was, you know, let's just hire 30 creators to all work under BuzzFeed so we can have, you know, we can be releasing 5 videos a day. And it wasn't all bad. It was a great time. I was surrounded, you know, I'm in my early 20s, surrounded by other creatives in their 20s, and we're all hanging out. And, you know, the environment that they cultivated was a positive one. It was a competitive one, but it was one where you wanted to stay late. You wanted to go out to drinks with your friends. You wanted to be a little crew. And as BuzzFeed started to grow, we all became these micro celebrities. And some of my friends are huge, massive A-list celebrities now. And it was crazy during that time, you know, being a crew. I felt like I was in a boy band. I felt like I was in One Direction or the Backstreet Boys or something, because we would go to like a VidCon or something and just get mobbed by people because we were the thing of the year, you know. And it was probably like a 3-year peak, and then it started to fall off as people started to get bigger and as the company started to get greedier. But it was a really interesting time, and I've just taken so much from it. And I think the farther I get from it, the more I'm realizing like, oh, that's interesting that I learned at BuzzFeed, or I can identify it in like in a commercial or in the way that someone's running a brand campaign. It's like, oh, they're doing this to elicit this kind of emotion because they want the consumer to feel like this. And, you know, it's become hard to unsee it. And I think it's made my enjoyment of the internet, it sort of went away because it became my job so much. And I was on, you know, 24/7. I was always trying to think of new ideas. And, but I will say that's sort of what inspired the create repeat mantra of I was able to just constantly make stuff and pump stuff out. And I do think it helped me find my voice. It helped me get better at my skills. And it helped me conquer a lot of my fears because I didn't have enough time to think about or worry, what if people don't like this? Because, you know, our videos were judged if they hit 1 million views or not. If it didn't hit 1 million views, it was considered a failure. And that, to me, I've had to unpack that in therapy because that is a weird thing. And I think for the longest time, it paralyzed me from creating more stuff because I was used to that benchmark for myself of, oh, if this isn't going viral, then it's not worth it. And that's just completely false. That's not true. But I've had to learn and deprogram my brain just to keep creating and not worry too much about the results. But yeah, it was a weird, fun time. Yeah.
So there's obviously, like, tech has completely fundamentally changed the entire world over the last sort of couple of decades. And you were mentioning it there of like, did we damage the world by what we created? And I know there's engineers who, like, whoever it was who invented like the never ending scroll really
Yeah.
regrets making that. And so your formula was what was it? Character
It was
plus
identity plus emotion.
identity plus emotion. So are there any examples of content that you've made where we're not trying to trick people per se into, because I think there's so many people who listen to this show who make fucking incredible work,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't market the work well, because the art you make is very different to the content that you make.
Yep.
And a lot of times you'll be making the art and you'll think, I've in order to keep up in this world and in order to pay my bills, I've got to make content around the creation of this art. And if it's not a skill that they've developed, even though they make fucking great art, it can really hold people back. So using the identity and emotion, how, when you're thinking about something that you want to make for Create Repeat that has a very pure mission of helping a lot of people, how do you approach it with that in mind?
I think the beginning of Create Repeat started on that identity versus emotion. So the identity being creatives and the emotion being, you know, whatever it is, optimism or inspiration or motivation that I wanted them to feel. I knew that with making it, I wanted, if I were to grow an audience, I wanted it to be an audience of creatives. And so I think it gets really difficult with art because, you know, art is supposed to do the speaking for you. You know, like, you're supposed to put out your piece of work, and however someone soaks that in and they interpret it, that's the answer, right? And I think something we preach a lot at Create Repeat is the idea that the process is for you, the product is for them. Because, and I'm sure you understand this, as
that's what I say.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like when you're making something, that is your time, because the second you release it, it's no longer yours. The audience decides what it is. And so I think that's what's really difficult about trying to market your art. And it is a completely different skill set. There's this older gentleman who makes these really obscure videos to promote his paintings. And he used a lot of green screen and bad like animation. And I love that. I think it's so great, but it's completely in the different direction from his actual art. And I think he's having a lot of fun with it. I hope so. And I'm not sure if it's him or if he's having someone help him, but that's a great way of, you know, marketing your art. I think.
Is it the guy who I've seen? There's a guy who's like painting in the middle of a really busy road.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this guy's gonna get hit by a car, and it stops, and he's. Yeah. It's quirky, it's weird, it stops you in your tracks, and you're like, who is this guy? And then he's showing his creation, and I think that's cool. And I think, you know, if someone, I hesitate to give much advice to this because it's a never-ending game if you want to play it. So I guess the first thing you have to ask yourself is, do you want to get in? Because I wrote a piece for this on our Substack called The Creator Casino, about how these platforms are designed to keep us gambling like someone at a slot machine. Because the virality, we're in the For You era now, not the follower era. And so if you're going to make something and it goes mega viral, that's amazing. But then if you do it again, you're going to have something that's going to flop. My wife made a TikTok of our dog. Our dog has really long eyelashes, and it had like 3 million views on TikTok. And she was so excited. We were all excited about it. Like, wow, our dog Happy Boy is famous. And we released another TikTok and it had 200 views. And that's just the era that we're currently in. And so if you want to play the game of trying to manipulate the algorithm and you know, constantly show up and keep making something and one-upping yourself, I think go for it, but just know what you're signing up for, because it is a casino. They're designed to keep you feeding the beast so they can get more and more free content, so then advertisers pay more money to be on their platforms. That's the whole goal of it. But I do think, you know, we get this question quite a bit, like on our creative advice column. And anything I've said is just like, try to just put your artwork in a weird place. Whatever you're sharing, just put it in a weird place. Sort of like you said, like the guy in the middle of the road. Do that. Go hang it on a building and photograph it and cut together some photos. Do something that is interesting and use that same creative instinct that you have. And don't try to copy other people. I think that's the biggest mistake that people make is they see the formula of, oh, this is what's working, but that changes every 2 weeks on Instagram. And if you're just going to be chasing that and getting down on yourself because it's not working versus trying something for you that you like and building your own way and just being consistent with posting. So I don't know if that fully answered your question. I think my heart is tugged in both ways of like, okay, how do you market your work while also not losing your soul in it? And so if you're able to, a lot of musicians go through this, right? Like, I don't think today you can be a successful musician without having viral success on TikTok or on Instagram. It's just the nature of it. And on my podcast, I've talked to a lot of different musicians. And the question I always ask them is, do you have to be a content creator in order to be a musician nowadays? Because, that's just the nature of it. You're not going to go play at these small venues and start to build a crowd. And now that you're going to medium-sized venues and larger, and you have this sort of word of mouth, that's now all on the internet. And you need to create a song. People are creating songs based off of a 20-second soundbite, thinking, okay, can this go viral? And we're just in the one-hit wonder era all over again. And I just really wonder what's that doing, and are people putting way more time into the marketing of it instead of the craft of what they're creating? So I would just say, focus on what you're making. And then if you are going to present it, get weird with it. Just try something different. And, if you know that it's a game, and if you're opting in to play the game, then play it, but know that it's not some pure thing.
Yeah, 100%. I guess what was coming to mind there for me is as you were speaking about that whole process is, I guess if you end up doing something because you've seen it working, or you have an idea that it might work, but it's not authentically you, then you end up in the position that you were talking about earlier. You've got to market it, but you have to market it with the genuineness of yourself in it. I was walking around near where I live recently, and I found, those like tiny little posters, and they've got like the phone number that you can pull off the like little tabs going around the bottom of it. You can pull off the tab, and it says, "Send me a voicemail, and I might make it into a song." And then there's a little QR code, so you can find that musician's Instagram, and she remixes your voicemail.
That's so cool.
And I was like, my God, this is genius. This is what it is all about. It's collaboration. It's completely random. It's a story. It's like everything that you need is in there. And it's just thinking differently. It's just like, come up with a different idea. Everyone is doing XYZ same trend, but this person did something completely different. And now I'm sure they'll be like, if it does really well for that artist, then I'm sure that will happen. But that's just marketing. Like, I think it's Gary Vee that says marketers ruin everything.
Yeah.
because an idea becomes successful and then everyone does it.
Yeah.
But what can you do that is out of the ordinary? I've got an event coming up in May, so this is just as much a plug as it is a case study. But I've got an event coming up in May where I'm doing an art swap. So I've made 400 prints. There will be 400 tickets available. People can come to my studio and they will get a free piece of art. And I've given away art before, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I've done scavenger hunts, and I was like, okay, I've done that idea. I want to explore something new. So I was thinking for ages, like, what could I do that's different? That's not, you don't have to go out and hunt for it. And then someone gave me a piece of their art recently. I didn't know them, and it was like a brand new connection. They was like, oh, I really want you to have this, and I just thought, creatives love like giving away their work. Yeah. So I thought, well, okay, so I'll have people come and they have to give me something. And it can be, I've baked you a cake. Here's a USB stick. I made you a song. Here's something I built out of Lego. Here's, I'm not very good at drawing, but I used to love it when I was a kid and I drew something in here. Because then I know you spoke earlier about that process that's for you of, I know that they will have gone into flow state and the time will have been wavy, and what felt like 20 minutes was probably 2 hours. And I want people to experience that, and then they get a piece of my art from it. So that's going to be a really fun project. But I also know that that's like 400 different flags in people's houses where they'll see that artwork, they'll remember the experience they had, they'll remember me, and so it's a marketing exercise. I'm pretty sure when I make videos about it, it's probably going to do quite well.
Yeah.
Again, because it's completely different, there's no one else who's doing that idea. So it's just getting your brain to click over into, okay, I make this thing over here, what can I smash from somewhere else into it, that is going to give it this life, so that people can actually discover it and enjoy it.
I really love that idea. I love it too, because it isn't tied to the actual product that you made, like your actual artwork. It could work with anything that you do make. And I think that builds less pressure on the actual item that you're making. I think people get into the trap where they're making the artwork, they're using it to get the validation, right? Like they're making the artwork be the thing, versus you making the event the thing, and your artwork is the thing that happens to be the item that you're exchanging. I love that. I think that's genius. I like see that. Now I'm going to steal that. So
you said earlier that you don't like giving advice, which I flagged that. I was like, let's put a pin in that. That's really interesting, because I think you've got a lot of great life experience to give that advice.
Yeah, I think, and it is ironic, because our Saturday newsletter that we do is called Take It or Leave It Creative Advice. And I think the reason why I called it Take It or Leave It is something that I learned at BuzzFeed. Everything that we would do was peer reviewed. And so we would do note sessions, and a lot of it would be TIOLI, take it or leave it. Because at the end of the day, people are going to do what they want to do. And I find that creative people, if you're a maker, if you make things, that kind of means you like being in control of things. You like the final outcome. You like making something that's from zero to something. And so I find, like, I don't want to tell someone like, hey, this is the exact way you have to do something, because in my experience with everyone that I've ever met, any other, inspirational people that I know, everyone does it a different way. And I think the goal is to more inspire people than to actually give them the playbook, because there is no playbook. It's constantly, evolving and shifting. And I think for me, it's more so of just that, that encouragement, because I never want to, when we do the Take It or Leave It, I never want to, we've gotten a lot of comments of people wanting me to review their work, publicly review it. And I'm really against that, because I don't think that's the point of Create Repeat. I don't think it's me going, this is good or this is bad, because who's to say, I have my taste, and it might not be your taste. I know the things that I like. But it's the idea behind it. It's the intent behind it. And that's what I really want to talk about. And so as long as someone is creating and getting out of their comfort zone, I'm much more comfortable talking about that from a place of getting out of your comfort zone. And like I mentioned, our book that we have coming out, it's more so we want to give you some inspiration, and then we give you a prompt of doing that. So say we write about getting out of your comfort zone, the prompt would be something like, hey, go to your local coffee shop and strike up a conversation with someone. Do that, because that is living a creative life. Because once you do that, that's a snowball effect that hopefully is going to carry over into your work. But you need to have a real practical, you need to go out and actually make the effort. You need to do the action, because fear fades with action. And so that's sort of the way that I like to give advice. And so much of the Create Repeat stuff is, I guess you could say, advice, but the goal is like it doesn't matter. There's times where I make something and I have a complete different intention than the way that the audience has taken it. I've had that happen so many times, and I've had it happen so many times in my career where, when I was doing comedy, I remember I made this one short film, and I had this joke in it that was my favorite joke. I was so excited, and we're playing it in front of a crowd of people. And the line before the joke actually got a huge laugh. And it wasn't intended to be funny. I didn't realize that it was a funny joke, and everyone laughed at it. And then the joke that I was happy about, they all kind of missed it. And it was a big lesson that I learned, because it wasn't, you know, I still at the end of the day got the result that I wanted, but it wasn't at the point that I was, you know, hopefully designing a joke to land at one point, but it got a big laugh. And I think that's how I take anything of like, okay, if I give you advice, I'm going to try to keep it a little more vague or a little more, you know, for the soul. I try to give, you know, here's practical, but here's more advice for your soul, because I think this is actually what's going on. And then like, you go off and run, take it however you want to do. But I guess like my space in this internet creative world is I'm just trying to be an older brother who has gone through it, and I can give you my 2 cents or tell you about my story, but it's up to you to interpret it however you want and make your own way. So that's been it. But I just don't want to be the person that's like, I know the answers, because I don't. I struggle so much with every issue that I talk about. I think that's the creative cycle. You know, you've seen it, where it's like oh, I'm awesome. Oh, this is tricky. This is shit. I'm shit. Wait, this is awesome. Like that is the creative process. And I'm so fascinated in it. And so, if you're asking me for advice and I'm in the current, I'm awesome stage of it, I'm going to be pretty cocky talking about it. But if I'm the I'm shit part of it, I might be pessimistic. And so I'm just trying to, you know, practice, stripping away like the false bravado that I might have and going, okay, what is the issue here? What are they asking? And what would I want to tell myself in this situation? And I just try to lay it out and then go, take it or leave it. So that's been my approach thus far.
I love that. And I think in doing what we do, we can't be too tied, because it would be so frustrating if we had this like unrealistic expectation of everyone who listens to our stuff. And you started off there by saying people will do what they want. And that was such a, I guess, light bulb moment for me when I realized people will do what they want. Because really, like, anything that happens in your life is because at the end of the day, you did what you want. Like,
Yeah.
Everything is a choice and a decision, and that's all of your choices and decisions have led you to where you are currently. And I've been thinking a lot recently about this scale of belief. When I was younger, someone who I knew sort of fairly well, I'm not going to say we were best mates, but we were definitely acquaintances, and he's been on the podcast, and a guy called Jamal Edwards, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And I'm really sad that I never got to speak to him about this, but he had a book called Self-Belief, and when it came out, his career was up here and mine was down here. And I was really sort of I was very resentful of this idea of self-belief, because I and I didn't read the book, which probably would have helped him like articulate the idea a bit better, because I was too angry with it. But I just thought, there's this idea of self-belief. Well, that's bullshit, because I believe in myself, and it seems like no one else on the planet does. I'm like the only one, so maybe I'm just crazy and this is not going to work. And it's been through just going on my journey and living my life and making stuff and things happening that I've started to realize, I think there's this scale of self-belief. And if anyone who listens to this podcast is somewhere on that scale, and they wouldn't be at 0%, because if they were at 0, they were at 0, they wouldn't be listening. So there's somewhere between 1 and 100. And I think the higher up that scale you are, the more likely for success you're going to be. And so when you are giving advice, you don't know where on that scale of self-belief, because I can say to every person listening to this, like, it will happen for you if you make great work and you're consistent with it and you put it out, and you shine a beacon of light into the atmosphere, and you galvanize around you the people that like and think and feel the same way as you do. And that's the formula for success, and that will bring you everything you need. I can say that because I believe it's fucking true. But depending on where you are on that scale of self-belief, that might not hit you. And I think that's the beautiful thing about podcasts is I know that making this show fundamentally changed my life, because it was reinforcement of every time I do an episode and I speak to an expert, it's reinforcing what I believe. It's challenging me on certain points that I don't believe. And it's it's forming this this foundation that I can build everything on top of. So I know by putting these episodes out, you might be at 1% on the scale, but the more episodes that you listen to, the more that scale will start to go up, and then you're more in a place where you're able to take on what we're sharing. So yeah, a lot of that really did resonate with me.
I love that. I think that's so good. I'm going to quote you on that, the scale of belief, because yeah, no, that's so true. I think like anytime with the advice, I try to just look at it as what is true for me and my experience, because that's the other thing. Like I don't want to come off as dishonest, you know. I don't want to, and I think it's so easy to do that. And so anytime someone asks me something that I'm not sure of the answer, I try to give them that answer, because I have been in those same exact moments in my life where I've been comparing myself to other people and knowing like, oh, I don't have this. How could you preach this? And it feels like anyone who is at the top of the top of the mountain, they have it all figured out. And I think like what you just said is just it's so universal, because you can say the exact same thing and anyone will interpret it as how they are. Maybe that's a person finally opening up their laptop and writing one line of their novel, or maybe it's the person who finally releases that novel on their website for free after sitting on it for 4 years. It doesn't matter like where you're at in the process. And I think like that's exactly what we try to do, is just encourage people like, hey, we'll meet you where you're at. And you can see by how we're doing, we say create, repeat. We do post pretty much every day. We're always, and it's me, I do everything for it. And so I'm trying to just instill belief in other people by doing and just saying like, hey, if I can do it, I promise you can do it. Like I'm not some genius here. I'm just doing it, I guess. And so if that's the first step, then take it.
Yeah. And again, completely relate to that. It's the same with me. I think it's your creative career is a menu, and it's going to be, if I look at my work, there's little bits of all of the creators, and I've picked and chosen the bits that serve me, the bits that work for me. And if it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean that it's bad advice. It just means like that's not your vibe, and that's absolutely fine. Yeah. We just pick and choose what works for you.
Yeah. It's like consuming art or something. It just might not be for you, right? Like sometimes it's not if it's good or bad. Like I guess maybe there's some bad stuff, but no, but like you can't decide that. And it's just, is it for you? Is it not? And maybe it's not for you in this season, but it will be later on and you'll remember it or something. And so, yeah, I love what you're doing.
I guess the best way to illustrate that is when you read a book, you will highlight completely different passages now than you will in 5 years time. And that goes to show that like it's always ever changing, and to just be open and follow your curiosity and follow what feels right in the moment, and it can't let you down.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So the book is out in November.
Yeah.
And how's that process been, putting the book together?
You know, it's been great. It's been an easy project because we weren't forcing it, and it was something that just wasn't on my radar, and we were presented an opportunity. And you know, I was writing things on our Instagram, writing little blurbs and short paragraphs, and someone saw us and thought, hey, like I think you could do this long form. And you know, I've been a writer my whole life, but it's just been on the narrative side of things. It's been screenplays, and so writing in a book format, and that also led to us writing in the newsletter. You know, they were the ones, our publisher was actually the people who suggested like, hey, you should really get on Substack. You should put yourself out there. And I've joked that this has been the first time I've actually experienced imposter syndrome, because you know, when I was doing comedy and I was finding success in it, that was something that I wanted to do since I was 8 years old. And so when I was, you know, I had opportunities to be on my favorite television show of all time. I've been in rooms where I've got to pitch to major networks, and I felt like, yeah, I've been building up to this my entire life. And so now, with writing,
what was your favorite show about all time?
Arrested,
because I feel like I failed on my research.
It was Arrested Development. I got to do a little.
You were on Arrested Development.
Yeah, and it was the craziest.
Dude.
Yeah, it was the craziest experience. I loved and hated it because it was just it's gnarly to be on your favorite show, and I'm looking Jason Bateman dead in his eyes, and he's Michael Bluth, and he's doing the whole bit. And it was hard to be present because I'm such a fan of the show, and it was on the Netflix revival of it. And so, it was an awesome opportunity. But, when I booked that role, I booked that role on my very last day that I worked at BuzzFeed, and I felt, oh, this is the path. Yeah, I made internet viral comedy. Now I'm going to go take it to TV. Then I'm going to have my own TV show, and then I'll be a movie star, and then I'll have my own comedies. Like, that's kind of how my mind was going. And and then but that was such a crazy time for me. But now, as I've been getting into this, being an author and trying to own that and understand it, it's felt bizarre to me. I feel like, oh, I was terrible in English in high school. I was terrible at I found it really boring. I used to hate reading books. And now in the past couple of years, I can't get enough of it. I'm reading about 3 books a month now, trying to just like absorb as much as I can and find the things that I've been missing out on. But I guess I'm just being vulnerable in these books and in our newsletter posts. And that's what's really resonating with people. And so I'm still coming to grips with it, but the process it's been tapping into that flow state every single time, where I think, I joke, I've been writing a screenplay for 10 years and I can't crack it. And yet the book, I feel like it just kind of flowed out of me, and it helps that I co-wrote it with my wife too, who's also a creative, and she has her own perspective, and it's topics that we talk about every day. And so having a collaborator who's also, my partner and my best friend, that really helped. But I really love it, and I want to continue to write more. I have a few other, book proposal ideas. So if any publishers are listening, hey, hit me up. But that's something that I didn't see coming. If you would have told me this 2 years ago, I would have thought you were crazy. So yeah, but Arrested Development was crazy.
That's ace.
And
that's ace. That's ace. I think, if you want to come back on in November and talk about the book,
would love to.
That could be cool. So one last question then. If you could go back, is there anything that you'd change, or is everything that happened, that's what got you to where you are today?
That's such a good question. I think the honest answer is everything needed to fold out the way that it did to get me to the place where I'm at. And currently, I could be in a much better spot as well. And I'm just sort of trusting the process right now of knowing, like, okay, if I'm living honestly and just trying to put more good out into the world, hopefully something can come from this where it can lead me to the next season of my life. But I've had extremely huge highs and really down lows. And I think the lessons that I learned in all of those seasons for me has really shaped me into the man that I am today, and that I'm getting closer to the person that I want to be. And so I think, like, it's really hard when you're in that deep, dark hole to hear that, you're learning something, you're gonna get better. But I promise you, like, it is true. And I'm telling you, like, I was in a very, very, very dark place for years, and I didn't think I was going to make it through. And I, because of leaning into my creativity, leaning into this honesty, leaning into expression, I was able to rediscover myself and get better and find a better version of myself, a more confident, a real version of myself. And so I don't think I would have found that version of me without going through all the struggles. So I do think it's part of it. It's the creative process, right? I think it is a universal concept for even life. You're going to have the high highs, you're going to have the low lows, and that process keeps going. You never get out of it. You're someone who's, it could be, I don't know, the world's biggest musician. Elton John sits down at a piano to write a song. I'm sure he probably still struggles with a bunch of self-doubt, thinking, oh, I'll never create anything as good anymore. Like, that's something I don't think you fully ever get out of. I think you just learn how to manage it a little better, or at least have a little perspective in the moment. And so I wouldn't change anything. But that's also how I'm currently feeling. Ask me on a down day and I might tell you different.
Dude, no, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Where can people find you?
You can follow us on Instagram at create.repeat. Same on our Substack, createrepeat.com. And our podcast is the Create Repeat podcast. It's on YouTube and anywhere that you listen to your podcast. And yeah, would love to have anyone follow along and join this. But yeah, I'm so happy to come on the show, David, and talk with you. It's been the highlight of my week. So thanks for inviting me.
Oh, bless you. My pleasure. Thank you, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you know someone who would benefit from listening to this episode? If you do, share it with them. This podcast literally wouldn't exist if it weren't for the paid subscribers over at creativerebels.substack.com and for the team at Joy Collective.